Brett, could you kick that down a slide? I just wanted to welcome y'all back to Post 370. It seems like a year, but it's only been like 2 or 3 months since F.I.S.H has been here. We're happy to have you all back. Great seeing everybody. Go ahead and click that one more time. I just wanted to welcome you, and if you are a member of the American Legion, thank you so much for your membership. Everything we do here, we do to support veterans and their families. If you're not a member and you'd like to be a member, we would love to have you join our family. Please talk to me. We'll get you the application and talk about eligibility. If you're a member and haven't paid up yet for 2025, you can take care of that tonight, all right? That's just a little hint. So that's about all I'm going to say, because I know we got a lot to talk about tonight. I do want to say Happy New Year to y'all, even though we're almost in February. Last night I was calling bingo, and our Christmas tree was still up last night. So I was going to say Merry Christmas, but they took it down today, so I won't say that. I can say it. Merry Christmas, y'all. All right. Again, welcome to Post 370. I'll be talking to you soon. All right.
How you doing, everyone? My name's Steve. I'm going to be doing the pledge and I think the prayer. So I just had oral surgery this morning, so my apologies if I'm mumbling. I'll pray first, so my apologies. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, God, thank you for bringing this group of men and women together. So many here have really given up so much of their lives, not only in the active support of our military, but also in the support of those who support our military, to include Paul and F.I.S.H. God, I ask that you please be with Jade while he's up here talking, so that he doesn't ramble on like I did, and just lift him up. Hopefully some of the things that he says will resonate with others that are here. God, thank you for the American Legion. Thank you for all of those who make this happen. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah.
Faces here that I recognize. Chris over here, unbelievable. Tom Parks. Tom will be our speaker next month. Tom, raise your hand. There you go. There's Tom right there. Man, I'm really excited. So the way that we start off our F.I.S.H Speaker Series, every time we do this, I'm going to ask what service branch you're in. You're going to respond, and I think you know how you're supposed to respond. So let's rock and roll. Army. I like that. Marine Corps. Oh my gosh. Navy. Okay, that's pretty good. Air Force. Yeah, that's good. Coast Guard. Ron. Coast Guard? No Coast Guard. Space Force? Nothing. One of these days it's going to happen. A couple of years ago, we actually had the senior enlisted commander of Space Force come here, and he was our guest speaker. Master Gunnery Sergeant, is that right? Master Gunnery Sergeant Scott Stalker, who just retired, and he was like so many people that retire in our military. I don't know what I'm going to do next. That man's traveling all over the country speaking, talking about leadership, and just doing phenomenal. So we're so glad that you guys are here. If you don't know anything about F.I.S.H, let me give you just a few little pointers here about who F.I.S.H is here. So F.I.S.H is all about going fishing, and I don't mean for the fish underwater. We're out there trying to find men and women that have served our country, active duty military families, and we just step in. We do a little life with them, then we find out what's going on in their life that might be missing. It might be a service dog. It might be a mobility chair. To date, we've given away 44 service dogs. You talk about angels with fur. These things are absolutely unbelievable, life-changing little creatures that the best medicine you can ever think about. We've given away almost 50 mobility chairs. In fact, I just heard a story about a gentleman that we gave a mobility chair to, and it really has changed his life. It might be a roof over someone's head. Literally, a couple, about 6-7 months ago, heard through another fish. So I heard it from someone that heard it from somebody, and it got back to us. But this Vietnam veteran had 2 holes in his roof. Well, we went and confirmed that, in fact, there were 2 holes in his roof and about 10 buckets in the living room. No hot water, hadn't had hot water for almost 2 years, 18 months to be exact. And so with the phone call, we reached out to some friends in the Kansas City area. Hey, we're not roofers, but we need a roof for a veteran. What? We need a roof for a veteran. We don't want to pay for it. And we need it real soon. A couple weekends later, Shamrock Roofing put a roof on this guy's house. And Jeremiah, one of his buddies, one of his plumber buddies, we went and got a hot water heater, got hot water for this guy. We put an AC unit in this house. It was like a sauna. No veteran should live like that. So whether you like it or not, you guys are all fish now. So if you know of someone that is in need that will never, ever ask for help, let us know and let us see what we can do. We might be able to do something. I'm going to run through a couple pictures before we get to our speaker here. All right. You guys may have seen it on Fox 4. We had, my wife and I, there's my wife Leslie over there, who's really the backbone of this organization. We had an incredible adventure getting this from Florida to Kansas City. And I don't know if you read the Facebook post that I put up, but man, there was Southwest Airlines, no, it's too big, we can't send it, blah, blah, you're gonna have to do something with it. Our flight's in an hour. Sorry. And wouldn't you know, a guy showed up out of nowhere, a guy named John. Well, it can't be that big. We send all kinds of stuff. He got in his van from Southwest Cargo, drove over. I'll take care of that. You're sending letters to our troops? I'll take care of it. It's done. And sure enough, he said, don't miss your flight. Pick it up at Southwest Cargo when you land in Kansas City, which we did. Yesterday, I got a really surprise email from this guy. Mr. Chappa, this is John. I just want to know, did the letters make it to the troops? Oh my gosh, yeah, John. Thank you so much. They're incredible people out there. Southwest Airlines has no idea the kind of employee that they have. So we actually did send about 2,000 letters to 5 different APOs. So for those of you that, obviously have served, I don't know if you ever received a letter when you were downrange, but, the stories that I've heard, and it certainly made a difference. Next picture, please. So we just had our Christmas party, Christmas with the troops. It was November 22nd. And we used to have it here. And Dan, we love you. But last year, it was wall-to-wall in here. The fire marshal, thank God, was nowhere in sight. But the mayor of Overland Park was. And so he and I were standing over there like this. And he said, Paul, I know what you're going to say. Because the fire station's right next door, too. He's like, this is against code. Don't call the code guy. And so we moved over to Fiorella's Conference Center. We still had over 400 people. It was unbelievable. But you know what the best part was? The best part was that 35 unassuming, had no idea why they had been told to be at our Christmas with the troops, and their 75 kids showed up. Santa was there. Obviously you see a couple pictures. And Noah Gray was there. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit. Noah's one of our elves. When Noah and Santa got them up, they all got an envelope. And we ended up giving away $35,500, Bull. Is that about right? $35,500, and they had no idea. Again, they weren't going to ask for help, but their command, their NCOs knew that they were struggling. There might not be a Christmas. So Fish stepped in, threw the net out, and we took care of that. In fact, Noah, next picture, please, ended up, we selected 2 families from the fishbowl, and 2 families went shopping with Noah. Now, mind you, it had to be after Christmas because the Chiefs are doing so well that they had 3 games in 10 days. So it was after Christmas. So there's Noah at a Walmart. And these 2 people had no idea that pretty much whatever they put in their cart, we paid for as well. And what's so interesting, if you look at these pictures, cleaning supplies. Both families, it was nothing but cleaning supplies. They all got little vacuum cleaners for their kids when they spill stuff on the floor and stuff like that. And the guy from Walmart said, Paul, you gotta say something. this is for them. Have them get something. So we kind of, hey, get something for yourself. And they did. It was such a beautiful thing. So this is the second year that Noah's participated with us on this, and it's something that he just loves, and we're going to continue doing it. And speaking of Noah, if you've not been, if you watched the Raiders game, you may have noticed the most beautiful cleats he was wearing. Noah participated with Cleats for a Cause, and those were his cleats right there. And you can go online right now at NFL auctions and put in a bid. Now, the bid closes February 11th. I think the bid's up to $530 right now. But whatever comes in, 100% of it goes back to Fish. So that was pretty cool. Next slide, please. All right, more pictures. Christmas. It was awesome. You know, Deb and my wife, by the way, did such an extraordinary job decorating. The volunteers that we had were amazing. And by the way, we did honor, and Dan, you were here for something else. You weren't able to attend. But thank you for being such a great volunteer. John, Luis, Shep, and Lee, of course, Leslie and Deb, you guys are fantastic. Thank you. But, you know, almost Andy was there. We got Justin, who led the charge for the event that night. Next slide, please. And then on December 2nd, we had something with the F.I.S.H, we did acoustic Christmas, so some incredible country singers. I can't name a single one because I'm not really a country guy. So I'm the old rock guy. But anyway, it was really cool. Nate Smith, blah, blah, and you know, Priscilla Block, Low Cash, Kelsey Hart. It was an amazing event. It was packed. And of course, Steve was there. Steve, thank you so much. I think we have a picture of Steve. There's Steve right there. Yeah. So, Hyam, thank you for coming. Next slide, please. Jordan, there's Jordan. And of course, the Marines were there. You know, doggone Marines. What is it with you guys? Okay, so yeah, you guys were invited to show up and stuff like that. You guys were like way off in the corner somewhere by the toilets, right? Like, what are you guys doing here? I don't know. This is where they put us. No, you need to be at the front door, front of the line, right? So we moved them way over, didn't we, Steve? Way over the front of the line, and they were busy. They had people attending the concert doing chin-ups and stuff. It was pretty funny. So, and then we have our podcast. We just posted our 3rd annual podcast, and it was with Sergeant Major Sarah Bickle from the Kansas City Recruiting Command. It was a powerful, powerful interview. If you guys don't know, we do this quite often. You know, we just started it up, so we're just on our 3rd one. But you go on YouTube and go to Friends and Service of Heroes channel, and you can watch and listen to them there, or go and find them on Spotify. And we still are have been doing for a long time, our fireside with our veterans at Ash and Anvil and Gardner. You know, we don't talk about it, but Fish, the foundational stuff of everything that we do, we believe that God has given us all a gift of freedom because of you guys. And so we're not preaching, we're not preachers, we're not doing that, but we do have places for you to go so you can be with like-minded veterans and talk about the Lord. Okay, so we do this every 3rd Wednesday in Gardner. So I was there last night for a little bit. And 1st Wednesday now. Okay, cool, 1st and 3rd. So this is something, Mark, where's Mark at? Mark, you want to give us a quick little minute rundown on this coming up?
So as you guys may know, Brian and Gina from Z&M Twisted Wine are great friends of our organization. Brian spoke here last fall. Apache Pilot. They run the winery. They own it. They run it. They have selected us as their recipient of their beneficiary of their charity 5K in the spring. So on April 5th at 10, if you sign up, come early. You don't have to run. You can walk. But we're going to get. We are the beneficiaries of their inaugural. Their charity run, and they're super excited, and there's more great things in store for us from them. Had a long talk with them the other day, and they're looking toward issuing a limited run of Fish wine. They're going to have a label dedicated to us with pictures of our events on it. Our QR code's going to be on the back, and we're going to get a cut of every bottle of wine sold. So this is a really cool thing. It's got great cooperation with them. And it's going to be awesome. So, like I said, and if you don't want to run or walk, we're probably going to have a table there. I'm going to need some volunteers to help us hang out and hang out stuff. Oh, I'm going to be manning the table. Somebody has to be in charge. You know, somebody's got to. Most important troop leadership step is supervise. Yeah. Yeah, this is a new thing this week.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Speaking of social media, we got Chris over here, Army veteran, that is going to be helping us redo the website. So pretty excited about that. All right, hey. Yeah.
If you're on Facebook and you aren't friends of Fish on Facebook, you're wrong. So fix it.
All right. Were those all the pictures, all the slides? Okay, and then we got Tom coming up next month. And one other thing. So this I just got this afternoon. There's a company that years ago I reached out to Fish for, to do a little research. Tall Grass Market Research. They're looking for about 15 people, active duty veterans, that can do about a 15-20 minute questionnaire with them. They'll pay you $450 to do it. Okay? Yeah, $450 to do it. So if you want more information, get signed up tonight, and I'll get this to her tomorrow first thing. All right? So anyway, more details are on that. So, yep. Al Sanchez, come on up. You're going to tell us about the Young Marines.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, first of all, to the American Legion. They are a sponsor of the Young Marines, and we will be drilling with our Young Marines here. The Young Marines is a national youth organization, ages 8 to high school. They can go all the way up to 18, but they have to be in high school. When they reach 18 and get out of high school, we go ahead and discharge them, and they get an official discharge, retirement, as long as they've been there a year. But we just started a new unit. We chartered in September. We are a nationwide organization. We've been in existence since 1959, and I apologize to the Army, but not many people know about the Young Marines because it's associated with the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps League is the main sponsor, and we have great sponsors in the community. We thank Fish for letting us come up tonight. It is really, it's about focused on leadership, citizenship through community service, self-discipline, and having a healthy, drug-free lifestyle. We have about 5,000 Young Marines nationwide. My son was a Young Marine when he was 10. He's 39. He's been in the Marine Corps for 17 years. He's a major, getting ready to head to Japan. So the Young Marines makes a big impact on some of these kids. And some of our biggest leaders in the Young Marines are girls. And a lot of the big leaders within the group are girls. And so we welcome boys and girls. And if you know anybody in the community, we are having a recruiting event on February the 8th, and we'll have 8 of our adult volunteers who go through background investigations, have to be trained and approved by the Marine Corps League Young Marines organization. And we will be meeting here at 10 a.m. on February the 8th. I hope if you know someone, please ask them to come. We have about 4 Young Marines ready to come and join up, and we'll be drilling here once a month on Saturday and once a month on Monday evenings. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Al. All right. All right, man, we're right on time. I'm loving this. All right, enough about all of this. It's time for our speaker. Let me tell you a little bit about Jade. All right, Jade Hinman has worked for Honeywell FMNT in Kansas City for the past 5 years since his retirement from the United States Army in 2019. While at Honeywell, he has been an ISC project manager, a manufacturing manager, and most recently a manager in program management with a technology maturation portfolio. Jade spent 23 years in the United States Army before retiring as a lieutenant colonel. He was commissioned as an armor officer in 1996 from the University of California Davis ROTC program. Jade has served with the 132nd AR, the 270 AR, the 141 IN, 47th CAV, and the 338th CAV in various statewide assignments with 2 overseas tours to Korea and Saudi Arabia. Additionally, Jade has 3 combat tours to Iraq, 03 through 04, 04 through 05, 07 through 09. Jade and his wife Meredith have 6 adult children, it's hard to believe, 2 grandkids, most of whom live in the greater Kansas City area. Jade holds an undergrad degree in European history from the University of California, Davis, a master's degree in human resources management from Troy University, and an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Jade Hinman coming up. Let's give him a hand.
I accused Andy of saying that they needed him bad, and you're going to get it bad, so I appreciate it. So like a good staff officer, I brought my own laser pointer, but unfortunately, I don't think it works on the screens, does it? No. Technology. This is how you lose. All right, well, let's keep going here, and we'll start out. Oops, going the wrong direction. It's a great picture of me. So I probably worked way too much on this, but we'll see how it works out. So here's my briefing, Lieutenant Colonel to Lieutenant Corporate. I'm trying to be clever up there. I don't know if it worked or not. Okay, a little bit. I spend most of my time looking for the picture of the tank in the background right there. So, if you're a real astute person, you'll recognize it's a Marine Corps version of the M1A1's Heavy Common. It's this, you can tell by the smoke launchers, but we'll let it pass. It was a good picture. Per my intro, I do have 6, my wife and I share 6 kids. All right, real Brady bunch. They're all out of the house, but not off the payroll. All right, so we're working on that one. I want them to be more-ish off the payroll. Right now they're, and I'm sorry for the quality of the photo here. I had to, it turns out the original deck I built was almost 50 megabytes, and so I had to compress a lot of photos. So it took a beating right there. We actually have 3 grandchildren. This is the most recent one. He got commissioned in, was it in September? Yeah. So he joined the flock. And but all Mayor's kids all live in the greater Kansas City area. My boy down here is a squad leader out of 212 Infantry in Fort Carson, Colorado. As a matter of fact, I'm going to drive out and see him this weekend and see how he's doing. We're going to eat a lot of pizza and shoot a lot of guns. And then my daughter in the upper left-hand corner is up in Idaho with helped their mom with Coeur d'Alene. So I hear Coeur d'Alene's nice. I owned a house there for years and I was never there. So yeah, there we go. This is all the photos right here. And it's tough to get them all with 6 kids to get everybody represented all on one slide right there. And then get them past the censor too, because there was a final approval process to make sure all the photos met the mark. So here's my timeline. You guys can see it like any good picture. I've got all the fun things I did in the military. I was an armor officer. I was straight armor. I didn't branch detail or do anything fancy. I was clank. I was a tank for the entire 23 years I was in the Army. The last time I fell off of a tank was 2007, so it's been a long time since I've even seen one. I hear they're nice. But that was a great time. That was my tank in the background. There's my Panzer before it caught fire. And that's my crew. And if you'll notice down here, there's a little pictogram right here. For some of you guys may appreciate this. It's a direct straight line relationship. The cleaner you are, the higher ranking you are in that particular my driver, to show you what a small world is, this guy right here, Mills, just retired as a master sergeant in the U.S. Army last year. So he had his 19th birthday in the tank. Both of those guys were straight out basic training when they came to me for Iraq in 04. So it's how the circle is complete. He was a good kid. He turned 19. He was a man-child in the fact that if he fell asleep, you could not wake him up. Like you got a 10-year-old kid, they turn into a rag doll. This guy's kind of flop around. That was Mills. If he fell asleep, and he tried, he was a strong kid. He tried to stay awake, but after when you hit the 30-hour mark, sometimes you just can't stay awake. And that kid would fall. Then I got to worry about him getting caught in the turret and stuff like that. So we had to make sure he didn't get hurt. But those were good times. I always like to tell folks, I point this picture out right here, that little red dot, or a little spot of rust you see on the tank. That was the very first RPG that hit my tank. That was super awesome. It didn't detonate. It got my attention though, I assure you. All right, but it did not detonate. That was an interesting story. So like folks said, I've served in a bunch of tank units, and part of my big thing that I like to do nowadays, and we'll talk a little bit about this, is I like to help the veterans land on, I call it landing on their feet. Making sure guys, when they transition out of the military, and I use Honeywell as a good spot because we're a good place to land, and I spend a lot of time, in my free time, my wife calls it I'm the best unpaid hiring manager they have at Honeywell, because I do a lot of, I try to help out with folks. I don't know statistically if there's any advantage in coming to me. I like to think I'm helpful, but I may not be any different than flipping a coin. But I still, we talk to a lot of folks, and I help folks expand their networks. So there you go. Veterans Day 2004. What were you guys doing on Veterans Day 2004? Because that was me. That was a good time. Right. Believe it or not, it was muddy in Baghdad that day. Go figure. All right. So some of the things I like to talk about, and if you ever want to get me all fired up about stuff, here is kind of my list of esoteric discussions that I like to have with folks. And my poor wife has heard all of these in various shades of thought outness and sobriety. Okay. I have a great discussion point where I talk about the effectiveness of violence, all right, and how Elmo doesn't cover that in Sesame Street, all right, and part of the problem we as veterans have is when you're over there and you're deployed. One of the biggest things that I found was, I was in the chess club in high school. I was a freaking nerd, and I get over to Iraq. Fast forward from high school, and I'm a company commander fighting over there. This was no hearts and minds. Where I was in Solder City was guns, guns, guns. And you find out very quickly that violence is unfortunately very, very effective. And you got to remember that when you come back into this part of the world, you can't go straight to violence as a technique for achieving your results. You just can't. They frown on that here. All right. Giving versus sharing, I have a whole different discussion on some of the cultural differences between how cultures like to give and pat themselves on the back if they're taking care of folks, whereas other cultures, and I think our culture is more of a sharing. We like to share the problem, and there's some comprehensive solutions that come out of sharing versus, because once you give somebody something, they have to take what you give them, and they can't ask for anything more. But feel free to catch me aside on that one. All right. I have a great discussion on how hoarding toilet paper is an indicator that nobody trusts you. All right. Because I've been in organizations before, and I think we've all been in some place. You go into like the latrine in a barracks, and there's no shit paper, right? And you're like, what's up with this? And then you start doing inspections because you're in charge of the place, and you find toilet paper in all the wall lockers, all right? And you're like, folks are like, well, people are stealing toilet paper. It's a real problem. And I've seen organizations that have gone so far as to like post guards outside of the toilets or the bathroom latrines to make sure that no one's stealing the toilet paper, all right? And the solution to that is very simple. You go find your supply sergeant and you say, order toilet paper, order shit paper, until everybody vomits in this place, all right? It's just coming out, because what that's telling you is that if they don't trust you to take care of their ass, they don't expect you to cover their ass when things are bad either. So your best solution on that one is to not let them worry about the basic stuff, and they'll trust you about the important things. All right? It's a theory, not necessarily well thought out. All right? It's flushing it out, yeah. I'm working on it, Thanks. This one here, if I have to write a book, my title of my book will be How I Stopped Using Turn Signals and Learned to Enjoy Saudi Arabia. All right. Johnson County is a lot more genteel, but when you travel overseas, you'll find that using your turn signals gives away way too much tactical information to the other drivers out there. All right. And you got to make sure you got to keep that close hold. If you're changing lanes, that's between you and the good Lord. All right. And everybody else has to watch out for it. And there's some logic in that as time goes on. This one gets a little bit more salty. I've got a real heartburn with some of the veteran suicide stuff. Not that veterans are committing suicide, I have a problem with that. I think that some of the approaches that we as a nation are going after that, we're treating it kinder and gentler, and it's not working. And if you want me to get fired up, and I'll have a few more gin and tonics, and I'll probably get more visceral about it. But whatever we're doing isn't working. We need to do something else. And finally, the discussion of the entire evening this evening, a little bit more lighthearted, is the nonsense of PTSD. Making sense on your own can be risky, and we'll talk about this later, or as we go on. I would like to point out in this picture right here, some of you may be looking at that picture and wondering, what is that picture? Well, it's very grainy. Anybody know what that picture is? It looks like a rug. No? So? Well, yeah, I think the PFC is actually holding it. That's our Command Sergeant Major Daniel Skidmore right there in the photo right there. That is an anti-ship mine. Okay? Yes, exactly. All right? And we found that stashed in the back of a car bomb that attacked Amaria Police Station back in like '03. The car bomber, when he was committing the car bombing, I don't know all the terminology of it, but he got what we like to refer to as martyr's doubt, which is a little problem that happens with car bombers when they are finally in that last little act of, oh shit, I know how this is going to end. And this guy chose not to be a suicide bomber, instead ran off. And we found the Land Cruiser stuffed in the front gate of the police station, chock full of all sorts of explosives, to include that thing in the back of it. And when I saw it in the back, I was like, that's an anti-ship mine. And everyone's like, how do you know that? I was like, I don't know, it's an anti-ship mine though. And sure enough, it was an anti-ship mine, it had Russian all written around it. And this is actually part of my conversation. We'll talk about the nonsense of PTSD. My boss must have had the same phone conversation for a week after this event. And it went something like this. The phone would ring in the command post. My boss would, he wouldn't answer it. Somebody would answer the phone, and they would, they'd hand the phone to my boss, Colonel Quintus, and he would say something like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir, an anti-ship mine. Yes, sir. No, I don't know where it came from. No, sir, I don't know how they got it. Thank you, sir. Okay, fine. He had that conversation like a zillion times. And for my intel guys out there, who are my intel guys, you know where that comes from, right? Everyone's got a lot of questions about stuff. I'm like, dude, I do not know, all right? But it was an anti-ship mine in Amaria, 400 miles from the ocean. No ships, but they had a mine. So there you go. Good thing it didn't go kablooey. And we'll talk about how that kind of affects them. Actually, once we rolled it out of the thing, since nobody had a ship, we were pretty sure it was safe. So, I mean, I'm not saying this is Army strong, not Army smart, guys. This was a different era, all right? Yeah, exactly. That was the Sergeant Major. It can't be all bad. He's touching it, like, yeah, it's got Russian written on it. And I was like, yeah. Those are good days. Okay, so when I talk about one of the things that, and one of my big theories, and for what it's worth, is one of the leading problems, or a problem for PTSD with all of our guys coming back, is the fact that, folks talk about war, and Hollywood makes you think that it's, there's lots of things that Hollywood does. The biggest problem, in my opinion, with war is the entire experience when you're out there is one huge non sequitur, which is a fancy Latin word for saying shit doesn't make sense at all right? It may make sense to you, but when you're transiting the fight, when you're out there and you're doing stuff, you see all these individually weird things because you're kind of like cutting through somebody else, a bunch of people's lives, maybe not physically, maybe you are, and you see all this weird stuff, and the problem with us as humans are profound sense-making creatures. We really like things to make sense. And our culture, as I will talk about it right now, in Hollywood and whatnot, wants us to make sense. Because what does every Hollywood movie have? It's got a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Even Quentin Tarantino, he might mess their order up a little bit, but there's still a beginning, a middle, and an end. It may not just be in that order. And we're really programmed to want that. And when you don't have that, it causes a lot of problems, particularly for guys, junior enlisted, and folks who don't necessarily see the big picture. They struggle with that, because if they don't get it explained to them, they kind of spackle over their mind with what they think the answer is. And sometimes there's risks to that. The reason I bring this up is that before we went to Iraq in '03 for the ground war, the Army had this traveling band of graybeards led by retired Lieutenant General David Grange. I don't know if you guys know who General Grange is. A few of you probably do. To put it in perspective, General Grange, I think he retired from the Army in like the late 80s as a Lieutenant General. But when he joined the Army in 1944, 43 or 44, and he was General Gavin's RTO in Normandy. So when General Gavin, the youngest division commanding general in the Army at that point, I think he was 33 or 34 at the time, when he jumped out of his airplane over Normandy, David Grange jumped with him. He was the next guy, right? And he was packing, and he was leading this group of graybeards, and he was coming around talking to all the brigade staffs in the Army, or at least the guys who were on the patch chart to go to Iraq. And he was talking about what you would expect. And I was expecting war stories about fire and maneuver and coordinating artillery. He didn't have any of those discussions. He said we're already good at that. He said the problem you're going to have is when you're really talking about these big fights, is you're going to have a lot of weird stuff, and you got to be prepared for the weird stuff, because if you're not, it's going to be disconcerting. His story was when they were fighting in Aachen in 1945, cracking into the right. As they're fighting into the city, they're in downtown Aachen. Somebody, Germans or somebody, let loose the zoo, okay? And you're like, zoo. And the first report of this to division headquarters was that, King Company had just killed a lion in their company area. And the headquarters was like, well, the Germans don't have lions, they've got tigers and panthers. But, that's the wrong tank, man. I mean, they've got leopards. And and then it came, then they realized it was actually like not a tank lion, but like a lion. And they had just killed this thing, and they're like, what the hell? And General Grange was talking about how General Gavin was having this discussion with folks like, they were talking about this lion, and as they're talking about this lion, they're in the second story of this building in downtown Aachen. This giraffe walks by outside. So this is January 1945 in Aachen, Germany. There's a giraffe outside the division CP. So what do you do with that? I don't know. I don't know what giraffe tastes like, but they probably all found out. I just remember that story stuck with me, because as we moved forward into Iraq, he was absolutely right. The actual fighting portion was relatively easy. Fire and maneuver wasn't all that hard. We were good at that. It was dealing with all the other weird stuff and trying to make sense out of it, particularly later. Because if you didn't, or you didn't have a way of coping with that, it could really be, I would describe it as disruptive or debilitating. So, again, these are all just Jade and Hinman's opinions. The human brain really wants to make sense of this stuff. We talked about Hollywood, and there is. I mean, you think about it. It's when you watch war movies, there's beginning, middles, and ends, and the violence is really just the backdrop for a larger story. But when you actually get out there in the fight, and you're actually in combat, sometimes violence is just the story. I mean, and you're kind of confronted with that, and it's tough, because you don't know what to do with it. And I have all sorts of experiences that still are stuck in there, where you're like, ugh. It was just like this isolated incident. You don't know what to do with it. But I have found over the years that the best technique for me has been to talk about it, right? One of the advantages that I had with my company when we came back is when my tank company came back, we sent all of our tanks straight to rebuild down in Afghanistan. So when I came back in the summer of 2005, commanding after a year of fighting in Iraq, I was a tanks without tanks. There's another expression for that. Tanks without a tank. And we just sat around for probably close to 4 months, cleaned the bluing off our M9 pistols, because that's all we had. So I'd given my rifles to the company that was coming in behind me. So we didn't have anything. And so we sat around in the company area, PT twice a day, and talked about the fight. And it was always interesting to me, the fellows would ask questions. If you're a driver in a tank, what do you think you see during the fight? You see the front 20 degrees of the tank, and that's it. And you're hearing some of the radio chatter, and most of you have been told to shut up, driver, and stay awake. All right? And so they would have a hard time processing. They would come to me and they'd say, hey, sir, you remember when we were fighting such and such, and that car was on fire? And I'd be like, no, but keep going. And they would talk about they watch the car catch on fire. Why'd that car get caught on fire? And you would be like, oh yeah, I can. And then maybe you could tell them, you could help them fill in some of those gaps, because if you didn't, and they kind of filled in those gaps on their own, they get some weird. And I say weird. How would they explain it? How would they go home and talk to their mom about this car they saw catch on fire? Was it space aliens? Was it Sasquatch? Did somebody kill them? What was it? And you have to kind of help them work through it. I found that in my experience over the years, that's the best way I've had to deal with it, and that's how I try and help a lot of my fellow veterans that too. Is, talk about it. What's the beginning, the middle, and the end? What's your sense-making methodology? And maybe give them some other points and maybe help them make sense out of the whole thing too. This is a technique. Because that's really what it comes down to is, help them share with some perspectives. What the conditions were. Because a lot of these guys, you think about it, even in some of the junior officers, when you ask about, hey, why are you out here? And they're like, hey, man, I'm out here because they told me to be out here. They don't know why they're necessarily out for that day. They don't understand the circumstances. You're like, hey, today's like the first election Iraq's ever had, like ever. And you're like, oh, yeah? Yeah, we're participating in it. It's a big day. So, we're not just out here randomly. We're doing something real important. We're trying to get the Iraqis to have their first election ever. And so be supportive of that. Like, oh, okay. And it's even a simple explanation like that, because when you're a commander or a boss or a leader in an organization, sometimes you lose track of what you think you know and you think everybody else knows it too. But you forget that sometimes you're the only person in that meeting from your company, and you need to kind of help share that with the other folks. I'm spitballing my ideas out here with y'all. And we talked about the mine story, which I also just thought was pretty funny. But the story I always really talk about that was truly PG was no kidding, there I was. All right, like any good cab story. All right, based on no kidding, there I was. All right, so I was in downtown Baghdad. I was actually hanging out in this little section of road right there. This is from Google Maps recently. It did not look anything like that when I was there. They put the guardrail back. I know for a fact that shit was flat when I was there because I'd driven over it, all right, several times. We're out on the road like this, and so in the morning, I'm out there on this main supply route, and my job was to, my tank company, we called it dawn patrol. We'd get out there at first light, before first light, and we'd start looking for IEDs on the side of the roads. And the good news is the IEDs they were placing were for convoys with, soft trucks and semi-trucks. They were carrying the food and stuff to the soldiers. They weren't looking for tanks. And so the IEDs weren't, I didn't view them as a threat to a tank. It's got to be a pretty big IED to mess up a tank. And they didn't have the resources to go after the tank. So we were literally looking for IEDs by driving really slow and with our flashlights hanging over the side looking for the IED. Was it a good plan? In retrospect, no. All right? But at the time, it was what we were doing. And so we're out there on dawn patrol, driving down the road, and we looked a little bit something like this. I had, 2 tanks on one side of the road and 2 tanks on the other side of the road, and we're just creeping along about 15, 20 miles an hour with our flashlights when it was dark and then just looking for IEDs. And we usually found at least 2 every day when we were out there on patrol. And we just go, hey, there's the standard climb. And as we're driving along, and I'm looking over the side, my loader's looking over the side, my driver was like, hey, sir, check out what's coming down the road. And I hadn't really been looking in front of us. And what's that? Yeah, exactly. Whoa, that's what his job is. He's looking, he's looking through the vision blocks in front of us. And coming, now remember, it's this road. This is a freeway. There's another one on the other side. It's a divided freeway. Coming the wrong way in my lane are 3 double-decker British buses, all right, packed completely comically full of pink foam, like huge rolls of foam, like sticking out of the top and out of the windows because there were no windows in it, like poking out the side. And dudes are sitting on top of the foam waving at me, all right? And these humps blitz through my formation, all right? And as soon as they were there, they're gone. They waved the whole time. And we watched them all leave. And that was that. And I was perplexed, to say the least. And there was a long pause. I could physically see every tank commander in my formation because we were all like looking at each other. And I look at all these guys, and they're looking at me. And so I get on the radio, and my comment was something like, instead of asking, because I'd been in Iraq at this point for like 10 months, this is my second tour, instead of asking the question of why is something, I asked the more intuitive question of, does anybody know why there shouldn't be 3 double-decker buses heading the wrong way on Huskies at 7 o'clock in the morning, packed with pink foam? And all of my tank commanders were like, nah, not the weirdest thing. All right, no. And, you know, one of them's like, shit, sir, I thought they'd be cooking a goat or something like that on there. And, you know, last guy's like, I'm not sure, but I think the last guy was one of our interpreters from one of our, you know, and so the bottom line is that these guys were, you know, my tank commanders were like, no, that's not the weirdest thing. So I don't know what the weirdest thing would have had to have been, but that wasn't it, all right? And my whole point on that experience is that I have used that story as an example of just non sequitur bullshit that you have to deal with. And then when you come back into the world, how do you explain that to people who haven't been there and sound like a normal, non-crazy person, all right? And then imagine if you're some kid who's, was thinking about this, and this is a PG version, okay? There's no body parts or anything like that. This one actually you can brief and nobody gets all fired up about it. But and there's worse stories out there. How do these guys make sense out of it? I make light of it because it is kind of funny. And of course my headquarters, because I ended up calling this up to my higher headquarters, and those assholes were full of questions. All right? They had all sorts of questions about, well, where do you think they were going, or where'd they come from? Like, you have all the information that I have. 3 double-decker buses heading the wrong way on Huskies, 7 o'clock in the morning. And which way are they going? East, man, east. All right, or whatever direction it was. And that's all I have. So I bring this to you guys as an offering of some of the crazy that I've had to deal with. And hopefully, as we move through life and we encounter the next generation, there'll be the next generation of veterans. Our war, every generation has their war. And I ask, as friends serving the heroes, that we help out the next generation, our current generation, help them understand this stuff and let them talk about it, kind of get it out there, and maybe offer some points, counterpoints, or at least laugh along with them and tell them, nah, that's not crazy. That's perfectly normal for Baghdad on a Tuesday. Why not? All right. The question is, why weren't they cooking it? All right. So there we go. Did I keep it? Within the time frame? All right. Do I have any questions, both relevant and irrelevant? Yes, sir. I think there is a relationship between how well you were informed about what it is you were doing and your overall levels of PTSD. Guys who, I've seen this a lot, particularly in the answer to Barney's question, the answer is yes, I think there is. I also think that, and I don't want this to sound elitist, but when you're better prepared in life to deal with things, you have better coping mechanisms. So like a career officer, or a career enlisted. One of the things that you get to deal with is you do PT every day, all right? When you're a junior, you do that as a pain in the ass, and the man's keeping you down and making you run every day. But in reality, it's a gift, all right? Because you get an opportunity to stay fit, and something as simple as fitness goes a long way to improving your mental flexibility, your ability to deal with things. And the resources that you have to deal with it just personally, with who you talk to, and then having some better coping mechanisms. It's a theory that I've got. I have found that because I've had 4 suicides from my past company as a company commander, and they all hurt. But my internal polling of that shows that they have 3 things in common. I don't think I'm not telling you guys anything new because you're all sitting down. All right? But here's some flashes. Guys that are susceptible to suicide, whatnot, all of them had given up on P2. They were all physically terribly out of shape. They weren't doing anything. They all had terrible not terrible, but they turned to substances. They were drinking, smoking, both. And they all had, for lack of a better word, very disruptive personal relationship influences in their lives. In other words, in a lot of cases they've had, made poor choices about who they were hanging out with, and those impacted it. And so I've kind of found that those are the big 3 common denominators that guys have a real tough time coping with the post-fight experience. Because then they get fixated on that 4 years or whatever time they did. And you guys both know that, your average enlisted guy, and even officers, you think about it, you go from being 18, and who's in your kimchi all day? Your mom, your dad, right? And you go to basic training, Who's in your kimchi all day? Your drill sergeant. And then you're a junior, you got a sergeant, platoon sergeant, squad leader. Somebody's in your business all the time as a junior guy. And then at some point when you're in your early 20s, you're like, I'm sick and tired of people being in my shit. I'm getting out of the Army. I'm going to be my own man. I'm going to get out and call my own shots, as much as that's. And you guys know that, and I think you all know, the far more terrifying thing to somebody being in your kimchi all day is the fact that when you get out and you're not in the military, the fact that nobody cares, right? And you stare into this howling abyss of nobody cares. And that's actually far more terrifying. I think a lot of guys have a real tough time with that. So they go from these extremes. You know, someone's always in their business, and then one afternoon, nobody's ever in their business. It's tough. They have a tough time. I don't know if that answers your question. Anything else? Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. I ate goat under the right conditions is in fact not terrible. Yeah. Now, goat curry from one of my Jamaican cooks, that stuff, I'll walk across the street for that. That stuff. Right. Yes, sir.
So when it's 120 degrees outside,
Yes.
how hot is it inside that tank?
There's a temperature based on how your testicles descend that will give you an indicator on that. Actually, that's a funny story that you should bring that up. It's unrelated. Those of you who know, some of you guys may be familiar with Mark Milley, General Mark Milley. He's been a controversial figure over the years. That cat was my brigade commander that year in Iraq. All right. He was not a rocket surgeon then. I'm not sure if he's a rocket surgeon now. But he actually passed. So this is like April, May of 2005. And the tanks are hot, by the way. They are not air conditioned, not even like a little bit. All right. And General Milley, because his brigade had a bunch of Humvees, he made this edict in a big meeting. I was sitting there with my boss, and he said, no Humvee, no truck will leave the camp without a functioning air conditioner. Okay? Which, I mean, at this point, I've bought into the discrimination. I realize that they're talking about the Humvee people, and those guys have a different risk profile. I'm in a tank. I'll deal with the heat. And so everybody nods along and writes in their notebook, yeah, no leaving the camp without a functioning air conditioner, which turned out to be a fairly standard order. And then he looks over at my boss, Dave Batchelor, and says, Dave, that means you too. And my boss laughed, because he thought Milley was kidding. All right? And then there was like this awkward moment where they both realized that one wasn't kidding. And then my boss was like, in this meeting, he's like, sir, the tanks and the Bradleys don't have any air conditioning. Like, at all. And General Milley at the time, Colonel Milley, was like, well, how the hell do you guys not die in that thing? And the answer is, I don't know, sir. And I look back on it, and I tell you what, I look back on all those years driving around that stupid Panzer, and the fights and the gunfights, all those things I can deal with. But when I really think about it, it's like, how the hell did I survive the heat? Because it was 120 degrees in downtown Baghdad, and that thing had a jet engine on the back, and it did not generate anything cool at all. And the very first fight I was in, those law of war breaking, Geneva Convention violating bastards fired an RPG into my tank and blew my ice chest out of the back of the tank. All right? So if you want to know, yeah, talk about violation of land warfare right there. I had to fight that whole day with no ice. All right? Savage. All right? It was rough.
Any other questions?
Again, a funny story. I can't. I'm interested in PG because I'll let your mind do all the work. So when we were fighting in Sadr City, which Sadr City is this 4 kilometer by 4 kilometer square slum in downtown Baghdad, it has about 2 million people living in that. So you go do the math, that's a lot of folks. And it was built on this template where all the blocks look the same. So you get into that place at night, and I tell you what, you get lost like last year's Easter eggs real quick. This is before GPS and shit. Well, we had GPS, but only I had it. And none of the other tanks did. It was everything all looked the same. And so we were fighting in there one night, or one afternoon, and infantry, it was a busy day. And one of my tanks calls up and says, hey, Six, can we pull off the line to go back to the nearby camp, Iron Base? And in my head, I know that they've got ammo. I know they've got fuel because I know in my head what their status is like. No. It was just like, right now, shooting, guns and stuff like that. I'm like, no, you can't pull off. We're the left. You guys are the left flank of this infantry attack that's going through one of these city blocks. And he's like, okay. And then I call back up. It's like, dude, why did you need to pull off? Were you out of fuel or something? And, no, my loader's not feeling good. He's got use the number 2. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. You're gonna have to tough it out. Oh, okay. And so that was the last of it. I was busy at that point, fighting. And then fast forward like 6 or 7 hours later, the company's pulling off, and we're hitting out on the main road, and we're getting ready to go back down to our camp for the day. And when you get out on the main road, you could open up all the hatches because you didn't have to worry about folks throwing hand grenades into your tank roofs when you're out on the main highway. And so we open up the hatches. And usually when the guys would open up the hatches as we're driving, you'd start seeing the Gatorade bottles full of yellow getting chucked out of the tank from guys spending all day in there. And the tank in front of me, which correspondingly happened to be the tank that had called me about pulling off the line, in addition to Gatorade bottles being yeeted, all of a sudden this full-size igloo goes, whoop, and I saw the igloo, one of those round igloo things going, get yeeted out of the loader's hatch. And my first thought was like, I was about ready to call him and say, hey, dude, what are you throwing those things? And then I was like, I know what's in that igloo. Yeah. Some poor guy is going to be driving down the road, go, ooh, look, an igloo. All right, some Iraqi, and he's going to fetch it up because it looked really good from the inside. I assure you, it was destroyed on the inside. Or it looked real good on the outside. Anyway, these are all of my stories as I tell my wife, and she'll tell you they're entertaining. A few of them are true.
Hey, Jade.
Yes, sir.
So, Quintus, you're talking about Leopoldo Quintus, right?
Leopoldo Quintus III.
Yep. Good dude.
One of my best bosses, yes.
Yeah, he was your battalion commander at the time you were in Solder City, you said?
No, he was actually another. David Batchelor was. I was
Yeah.
attached to 141 Infantry.
All right.
With,
And then were you guys under Abrams Brigade?
Son of Tank, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
John Abrams.
We could talk stories for days, my
Yes.
3ID days.
General Robert B. Abrams, a.k.a. Abrams, the youngest son of Crichton Abrams, who is the namesake of the M1A1 Abrams. All right, an enormous, raging asshole. But I will tell you right now, if you're ever in a fight, he was hands down the best boss. We fought the bad guys to standstill, and it was impressive because of him. And I remember, this is a completely unrelated story, but the commander for 2-5 Infantry, or 2-8 Cav, we were out at a suicide car bombing in Baghdad, and I'm there. And General Abrams, then Colonel Abrams, pulls up with his PSD, hops out. Things are kind of a mess, and I'm there with Carter Lopez, who was the 2-8 commander at the time. He was a crazy guy from Puerto Rico. And Abrams hops out, says some stuff, leadership. You guys are doing great. And this place is a mess. There's stuff's on fire and stuff's falling down. Hops back in his truck and drives off. And Carter Lopez looks over at us 3 captains standing there, and he goes, "That's why they don't call it M1A1 Lopez." All right? And I was like, facts. So, it was a crazy afternoon there. So, sorry.
Any other questions for Jade? Jade, thank you so much. Give Jade a hand. Makes a lot of fun. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you once again, Jade. Now we've come to the end of the program where if you have gotten a red ticket, you're a veteran, great. If you've not gotten a red ticket, please hold up your hand. We'll get you one right now.